and good morning and welcome to Unpacked, SYP's very own and very first Eco Festival. My name is Liam Fowley. I am the MSYP for Kilmarnock and Irvine Valley. I'm also a trustee of SYP, and as part of my role as a trustee of SYP, I lead the campaign SYP Reduce Pollution, Pack It Up, Pack It In, and I'm really excited that you could join us today for Unpack. This has been a long time coming. We've put a lot of work into this. I'm very glad to see you all here joining us. So we've got an action-packed day from right now till about 5 o'clock. We've got loads of MSYPs, young people and some stakeholder organisations involved to make this day the success that it is and make sure you guys have a great environmentalist experience essentially. So your first session's running from 10:30 till 12 o'clock. Then it's a wee break, and then you've got 1 till 2:30, and then another wee break, and then it's 3:30 to 5 o'clock. So I'll give you a rundown. So SYP is the democratically elected voice of Scotland's young people. It's made up of 160 MSYPs that represent every constituency in Scotland, and 11 national voluntary organisations. We are made up of young people aged 11 to 25 that are elected every 2 years to represent their constituents to decision makers in Scotland. Part of that role is a national campaign in SYP. So every year MSYPs choose a national campaign, and this year, way back in June last year, MSYPs, after consulting over 10,000 young people, chose environmental protection to be the theme of their campaign. The Conveners group then went away and through loads of consultation with young people in MSYPs decided that Pack It Up, Pack It In would be our next campaign, and its kind of themes are the single waste packaging, reduction of single waste packaging in Scotland, improving waste management and recycling in Scotland, and our overall aim is to empower young people to speak out and take action on the reduction of pollution levels in Scotland. So here we are. Part of that, we have a campaign delivery group, so that's a group of young MSYPs that, kind of a musical accompaniment. Part of that is campaign delivery group. That's a group of young people that help us steer the campaign and make sure it's accessible to young people and grassroots MSYPs, so it's easier for them. And that includes every month since October when we launched the campaign. We have done an action day, so that's been things since poetry readings, we've had people climbing mountains, we've had upcycling and craftivism, we've had everything, and it's all about making and helping young people to be empowered to take out and to take action against the reduction of pollution levels in Scotland. So it's been really exciting to see that, and this is our next one. So our August action day is today, so there'll be loads of tweaks you'll probably see as well as this Eco Festival. This is probably one of the most exciting action days I've had so far, at least I think so, but I'm very biased. That being said, I've said this is the most exciting action day for every action day I've ever had, so there you go. So thank you so much for getting involved. I invite you to go onto SYP's website and check out more about SYP, all the stuff they do, and what we do, and more about the campaign as well. There's so many opportunities to get involved with this, and so many other things, so please do take the opportunity to look into them and find out about them. So as I say, our first session today is running from 10:30 till 12 o'clock, and we're going to have an introduction to Pack It Up, Pack It In. I don't want to steal too much of that thunder. We've got the amazing Conveners group, so that's the 10 subject committee conveners of SYP subject groups that are going to talk to you about Pack It Up, Pack It In. The Conveners group lead and steer the campaign, as well as the campaign delivery group. So they've all grouped together and they've done loads of videos, and I know it's taken them a few times and a few takes to get it, so we are very thankful for that. So they've got a video introducing Pack It Up, Pack It In, its recommendations, what we've done so far. We're then going on to our next session, that's the Marine Conservation Society, and it's Ocean Optimism. We've worked with the Marine Conservation Society since day one. They're part of our campaign advisory group, and they really do help us a lot with working out what we can kind of steer into, what we can grasp, etc. So I know there's a lot of stuff going on in the Ocean Optimism session. I'm really grateful for Catherine and the team at MCS for helping us there. And I know there's some beach cleaning tips there as well, so that's very exciting. I know I'm going to try and get to a beach where I can. After that, we have climate change in Canada. which is really exciting. Again, that's looking at a global issue, so locally in Scotland, what can we learn from international counterparts? What's Canada done that maybe Scotland can try and grasp and steal almost? After that, we have from Scotland's young people, so that is SYP's next Manifesto Consultation, which is live just now. That's one of the biggest democratic exercises you'll see in SYP, so we're getting a wee plug of that. There's loads of stuff about climate change in there that links into Pack It Up, Pack It In, so it is definitely linked. Don't worry, we're not just plugging another consultation, it's steering into that climate change as well. And then, last but most certainly not least, we've got some poetry readings from our MSYPs. So way back in February, for January for Burns Day, one of our action day was to make some climate change themed poetry, and that we did. We got loads of young people in MSYPs involved in that. It's really exciting to see everyone being really creative with that. So we're wanting to share some. So your first session, 10:30 to 12, as you can see, is pretty damn packed, and I'm happy to say all 3 sessions are just like that. So 10:30 till 12, 1 till 2:30, and then 3:30 till 5 o'clock. So it's the unpacked pollution is our first session. Then it's make, do, and mend, which I'll let you be excited until you find out what's happening then. And our last session is using your voice. So 3 different sections, but really, really important, and they're all really exciting. We've worked our socks off for this, so thank you so much for joining us. And I want to say just now, thank you so much to every single person who's been involved with this. Our campaign delivery group, our conveners group, all our stakeholder organisations, all the MSYPs that lending a hand, all you guys for coming, thank you so much. And of course to SYP's very own events and campaigns officer, Rosie Burgess, who is an absolute behemoth of everything when she works on this. She's just brilliant, so we couldn't do that without her either. Thanks so much. I hope you enjoyed the day. And I'll be checking out Twitter as we go along. I know the conveners and the campaign delivery group will as well. Enjoy the day, and see you at 5.
Can you answer this question in 30 seconds? How many young people told SYP they think plastic packaging damages the environment? A, 61%, B, 71%, C, 81%, or D, 91%? How many young people told SYP they think plastic packaging damages the environment? The answer is B, 71%. Did you get it right? There will be more 30-second questions throughout the day. Good luck!
Young people's views and recommendations on reducing litter and single-use packaging and improving recycling in Scotland.
Hi, my name is Emily Nix and I am convener of the Health and Wellbeing Committee. I'm wearing an orange jumper and glasses and I've got brown hair. So towards the end of 2019, over 2,000 young people from across Scotland responded to our Pack It Up, Pack It In campaign consultation. Here is SYP's conveners group to share young people's views and recommendations for reducing litter and single-use packaging and improving recycling in Scotland.
Hello, I'm Callum Nimmo. I'm the convener for the Jobs, Economy and Fair Work Committee. I'm wearing glasses, I've got green eyes, sort of dark blonde hair, and I'm wearing a sort of t-shirt with a blue denim jacket. Over 1/4 of young people told us that litter negatively affects the way people view their area. We want local authorities and the Scottish Government to make funding and support available for young people and other community groups to carry out local projects to reduce the impact of littering and to increase community pride in their local area. We recently wrote to the Scottish Government to tell them about this recommendation in response to their consultation on community climate action hubs.
Hi, my name is Victoria and I'm the convener of the Culture and Media Committee. I have red orangey furry hair, black shirt and glasses. Nearly half of the young people who responded to our consultations told us that having more or better bins in their area would reduce the amount of litter. We want to see local authorities increase the number of secure bins in public places. MSIPs have shared their recommendations with their local councillors to ask them to take action.
Hello, it's Liam Fowley here again. I am the convener of SYP's Education and Lifelong Learning Committee, as well as the campaign lead. I'm wearing a dark blue polo shirt, I've got a brown beard and kind of blondie ginger curly hair. Young people told us that they think it's individuals that have the most responsibility in reducing litter levels in Scotland. But they also thought that local authorities, Scottish Government and manufacturers have a role to play in this as well. We think all young people in Scotland should receive improved practical environmental awareness education and be empowered to take action to live more sustainably. We also think young people should be meaningfully involved in designing and delivering education programmes, because these are the best programmes. In March this year, MSYPs met with the full Scottish Cabinet, and this was one of the actions we told them about.
Hi, I'm Rehabilitative, and I'm the convener of SYP's Equalities and Human Rights Committee. I have long brown hair and I'm wearing a yellow shirt. Nearly 3/4 of young people think plastic packaging is damaging to the environment. We would like the Scottish Government to carry out a full review of how to reduce the use of plastic and to consider a full or partial ban for certain products in Scotland. Earlier this year, we responded to the Scottish Government's consultation on the Circular Economy Bill to tell them about our recommendations. Although the government won't be taking this bill forward because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we will continue to raise awareness of the negative impact single-use packaging can have on the environment.
Hi, my name is Aaron Donald. I'm the convener of the Transport, Environment and Rural Affairs Committee, also known as TERA. I've got brown hair, I'm wearing a green jumper and I have glasses. Young people told us that packaging that is recyclable and reusable is more important than packaging that is affordable. However, 1/4 of young people told us they would be more encouraged to use environmentally friendly packaging such as reusable cups and bottles if it was cheaper or free. We would like to see retailers and manufacturers take steps to improve the recyclability and reusability of their packaging and to minimise the excess of packaging. We would also like to see reusable packaging to be more affordable, more readily available and easier to use.
Hello, my name is Thea and I'm the convener of the External Affairs, International Relations and UK Committee. I'm wearing a blue top and I have red hair. Over 90% of young people told us they recycle. And of those, nearly 3/4 recycle because they know it is good for the environment. Generally, young people feel aware of what they can and can't recycle in their area. Although young people were less aware of whether or not less common or mixed material items can be recycled. We would like local authorities and the Scottish Government to do more to raise awareness amongst young people, to help them understand what can be recycled and when recycling is collected in their communities. Thank you.
Hiya, I'm Ryan Kelly. I'm the convener of the Social Security Committee of the Scottish Youth Parliament. I've got black hair, glasses, and I'm wearing a red and blue check shirt with a black t-shirt underneath. Over half the young people who responded to our consultation told us that they'll be encouraged to start recycling or to recycle more if there were more recycling bins in public places. We would like to see more recycling bins in public places, including in schools, colleges and universities. Since the start of this campaign, MSYPs have successfully introduced new recycling systems in their own schools and have helped other young people to campaign in other schools.
Hello, I'm Liam Armstrong, convener of SYP's Sport and Leisure Committee. I've got a red, black and white striped shirt on and I've got dark brown hair. Over the coming months, as Scotland starts to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic, we will be supporting calls for a green recovery, asking Scotland's decision makers to listen to young people's views and making sure that young people are involved in the decisions that affect our lives.
Can you answer this question in 30 seconds? How many young people told SYP they recycle at least sometimes? A, 63%, B, 73%, C, 83%, or D, 93%? How many young people told SYP they recycle at least sometimes? And the answer is D, 93%. Did you get it right? There will be more 30-second quiz questions through the day. Good luck.
Hi everyone, my name's Catherine. I'm the Scotland Conservation Officer for the Marine Conservation Society. A huge thank you to everyone at the Scottish Youth Parliament for inviting me to record a couple of videos for you today for the online eco festival Unpacked. So what we're going to be looking at in this one is a little bit more about my role at the Marine Conservation Society, looking at marine litter and what we can actually do to reduce the amount of litter that's entering our oceans and ending up on our beaches. We've also done a video on how to do a beach clean, so definitely make sure you check that out. And this video will give you a little bit more information about what we do with the data that we collect from our beach cleans and why we do it in the first place. A little about me first. I grew up on the Murray coastline in Scotland in a small town called Forres. This picture behind me you might be able to make out is actually of beautiful Findhorn Bay, which was my local beach growing up. So I was so lucky to live so close to the sea. Our weekends and holidays were always filled with beach visits, rock pooling. I would say swimming in the North Sea, but most of the time it was running in and then very quickly running screaming back out because it was so cold. But it's so many of these amazing memories that I hold on to and feeds into something that I call my ocean optimism. So ocean optimism is this amazing movement that links people to the sea through memories and what creates happiness for them from the ocean, whether it is holidays, whether it's a favourite sea creature or an experience you have linked to the ocean or its amazing marine wildlife. But it's also to have optimism for the future of our oceans. We know that it's facing so many challenges just now, but I'm an ocean optimist, so I'm optimistic about the future for our precious blue planet because I know that there's so many people, including all of you who've chosen the time to spend watching this video, are going to be taking actions or doing research or helping spread awareness to make sure that we're protecting our seas for the future. Another big source of my ocean optimism was from learning to become a scuba diver. So when I went to university at Aberdeen, I joined the Student Sub-Aqua Club there. And this is a painting from a trip up to Orkney to dive Scapa Flow, which is some really famous wrecks. And it's from actually being able to explore underneath the waves, really just opened up a whole other level of ocean optimism for me. So many people don't realise that the seas and the creatures that we have living in Scotland, coming to visit in Scotland, are some of the most exciting in the world and some of the largest. You might be able to see this one just here is a painting of a basking shark. That's the world's second largest fish. They're absolutely huge and they come to visit Scotland every summer. They'll be here right now, opening up those massive mouths of theirs and sucking in all of the plankton. We also get the world's largest turtle, the leatherback turtle, coming to visit our shores to gobble up all of our jellyfish as well. So even if you're not a diver or you're not able to snorkel or you're just not too sure about swimming, start having a look in the rock pools, start looking out over the horizon the next time you go down to the coast. And I guarantee you'll probably be really surprised at the wealth of biodiversity and amazing animals that we have here. And this is all about building up your own ocean optimism. So with that in mind, Sheila the shark and I have our first task for you. I want you just to pause, take a minute, whether you've got a drink, take a wee sip, close your eyes and think about the sea. Think about, is it a favourite memory, a sea creature? And then take in a deep breath. And one more. So that second breath would have come from the ocean. So our ocean supplies more than half of the oxygen that we breathe. So not only it's all the amazing emotional connections we have with the ocean, physically we need the ocean to survive as well. So after this, if there's a break or if you're on social media or having a chat with anybody else in the household, discuss what their favourite ocean memory is, what sparks their ocean optimism, and start sharing it. By becoming a storyteller for the sea, you'll be doing a massive favour to it. The sea and creatures like Sheila, they don't have a voice that we can hear. So if you can become their voice to help increase awareness and help people fall in love with the ocean again. Because I do believe that if people don't love the sea, we can't then expect them to stand up and take action to protect it. So what action can we to protect our ocean? So at the Marine Conservation Society, we're a UK-wide charity. We've been working for over 30 years across the UK, as well as in some of our UK overseas territories. And we kind of work on three main areas linked to marine conservation. One is called ocean recovery. So that's all about recovering the ocean. So whether that's looking after specific species, like sharks, or whether it's trying to put in place a well-managed network of MPAs, marine protected areas, to protect specific species or certain seabed habitats that are really important for our oceans to stay healthy. We then also work on responsible seafood. So this is working all the way up the supply chain from me and you who might enjoy our fish suppers and encouraging us to use the Good Fish Guide, which is an online website or an app that you can use to try and understand where your seafood comes from and which fish at the moment is the most sustainable to choose. Our team also works with businesses and industry and the government as well to ensure that our seafood industry is as sustainable as possible, so we're not taking too much out of the ocean. And the last area of work is to make sure we're not putting too much back in the ocean that really doesn't belong there, and it's called Clean Seas and Beaches. And this is the area of work that I do most of my work in. So it's all about looking at marine litter and any other impacts that we're having on the ocean, such as chemicals and our bathing water quality as well, to ensure that we're cleaning up our oceans and stopping the amount that's entering it in the first place. Now, our other video today is going to talk about Beach Watch, our amazing citizen and community science project that's involving thousands of volunteers heading out to beaches to not only clean them, but then record all the different types of litter that they're finding on their beach, so we can produce annual reports based on our Great British Beach Clean dates in September. And this is the information we then use for our policy work. Now, policy sounds a little bit heavy and, what on earth is policy? I'll let you in on a little secret. When I applied for this job 5 years ago, I didn't really know what policy meant. But over time I've discovered it's just about changing the rules, and it's just depending on what level of governance, what level of organisation you're working at, as to what that policy might be called. So at school, it might just be a rule, a classroom rule, a school rule. That's the policy. Whether it's, no running in the corridors, that's a policy. Maybe if it's your local council and they've decided to ban balloon releases because we know that they're damaging to wildlife, that's a policy. They've changed a local law. Or maybe it's our national government. So example, the Scottish Government bringing in a 5p carrier bag charge. That's them bringing in new legislation, a new law, a new policy. So it's actually not as complicated as you think. It is just about changing the rules and putting that rule in place depending on where it fits in. But to do that, you always need evidence. We need evidence and we need information to be making sure that the right policy decisions are being made. Now, everyone at the Scottish Youth Parliament will be experts at this. You are all promoting brilliant policies and trying to get them implemented, whether it's at SYP, whether it's at your local council or national government, or even down in local communities, or maybe even your individual household as well. So some of the policies that I've worked on with the Marine Conservation Society have all come from the Great British Beach Clean Report, looking at the information our volunteers are finding on beaches, and then thinking about the impacts that they'll have on wildlife, so we can then prioritise what we want to work on. Now, one of the biggest campaigns that I've been involved in is for something called a deposit return system for bottles and for drinks cans. So again, it sounds a little bit complicated, policy often is, but when you break it down, it's really simple. DRS is actually in over 40 countries around the world, and basically all it means is when you go to buy a bottle of drink, you pay an extra, say 20p, a small deposit, and then once you finish drinking it, you return it to the shop or through a vending machine, and you get your 20p back, you get your deposit back. And this increases the likelihood of people recycling and decreases the amount that are found on the beaches and in the parks and rivers of the countries that have it. Now, as many of you'll probably know, changing policy is usually not something we can just do overnight, and actually involves involving loads of different people, organisations, expertise and skills. So this is why if you're a bit new to campaigning or a bit new to policy making, whatever skill set you have, I guarantee it will be useful for trying to change policy. Now, how we actually managed to get the deposit return system committed to by the First Minister, woohoo, so Scotland will be getting one, is because we worked with so many people. So there's a charity called the Association for the Protection of Rural Scotland, and they recognised this. They obviously saw the problem of litter in land, but they knew it wasn't just land. They needed to bring lots of people together to tackle this. So they created a campaign group called Have You Got the Bottle, which in the end involved hundreds of people, whether it was businesses, environmental organisations, bars, restaurants, cycling groups, sports groups, so many different people, to try and get the Scottish Government to commit to bringing one in. And to do that, it wasn't just all data and evidence. We also did loads of creative ideas to try and increase awareness, whether or not that was young people creating a giant jellyfish out of plastic bottles and taking it into Scottish Parliament to really bring it to the Cabinet Secretary as to why we needed this to happen. We've had musicians, we've had artists, we've had data scientists, mathematicians, storytellers. Everybody has got on board to help this campaign, and because we all worked together, we then had that amazing success story. So it's due to be implemented in 2022 now, so we then hope that our beach cleaners of the future will start to see the amount of these on beaches dropping because of that change in policy. But as I'm sure you're all aware, it's not just bottles and cans we find on our beaches, we've still got a lot of work to do. So if any of you have got any ideas on what policies we could be changing, what campaigns we should be running to reduce the amount of litter on our beaches, definitely get in touch. So why do we go to all that effort, all those years of campaigning, all those people to try and get those policy changes? Well, in the Beach Clean video, we mentioned about the direct impact on wildlife. But what a lot of us don't really think about is how long some of these items can actually stay in the environment. So it might not just be one animal that it hurts, it might be several, it might be generations of sea creatures, which really just brings home the importance of getting these policy changes in place so we can protecting our sea creatures for generations and decades to come. So I've got a bit of a task for you now. So if you're ready, maybe get a pen and paper ready or get your phone ready to put down your answers. And here it is, the Marine Conservation Society Marine Litter Timeline Game. So as you'll see, we've got 4 pieces of paper, each with a different length of time on it. So we've got down at the bottom of the timeline 20 to 50 years, 75 years, 500, all the way up to 1,000 years. And over here you'll see Sheila has got a bit of a collection of the types of litter that we do find on our beach cleans. So quite easy to spot. We've obviously got our plastic bottle, we've got our plastic bag, a crisp packet, and yes, that is a disposable nappy. We do find disposable nappies on our beach cleans, and it is disgusting. So your challenge now is to think about those items and think about if they entered the sea, how long would it take for them to completely disappear? So there is one item for each of these pieces of paper. So I want you now to either take a note down on your phone or scribble it down on a piece of paper. How long do you think the nappy, the bottle, the crisp packet and the bag will take, and match them up with each of those 4 pieces of paper? And I'll give you a countdown from 5 seconds. Quick thinking. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, if you had a quick guess. All right, let's have a wee look. So if we start down at the bottom of the timeline, I wonder what you guys put for 20 to 50 years. And it was actually our plastic carrier bag. So this is why it's so good that we've got that new policy change of the 5p carrier bag charge, because since that came in place all over the UK, our volunteers are now finding less of these on beaches, which is a brilliant success story. So moving up to 75 years, I wonder if anybody got this right. That's where our crisp packet is. Now, things like our crisp packets are really tricky because they're what's known as a composite material. It's made of plastic and metal, that foil inside, which makes it almost pretty much impossible to recycle. So this is why we also need to be thinking about what products are made of and how they're put together. So we need our producers to be thinking about the end of the life of their product. Yes, this is great for keeping our crisps nice and fresh, but is it really worth it if it's really hard for these to get recycled and for them to end up in landfill, being incinerated, or ending up in our ocean? None of which is really that great for the planet. So we need to be thinking about solutions for these things, especially when they're lasting over 75 years in the marine environment. Next along, we had 500 years. So 500 years, unbelievably, is our disposable nappy. How crazy is that? This one's clean, don't worry. But 500 years for a nappy to disappear. Now, the reason that we're finding nappies on our beaches is what a lot of people don't realise. Even if you live miles and miles away from the coast, you can still have a huge impact on sea creatures like Sheila through your bathroom. So people are flushing things like nappies, wet wipes, cotton bud sticks, all sorts of things down the toilet, not realising that when we get heavy rain or pipes get blocked, there are pipes called combined sewer overflows that will then chuck out all of that water, including these items, straight into the sea. So you can all help by only flushing the 3 P's down the toilet. Pee, poo, paper, that's it. Everything else like nappies need to go into the bin. Which means, congratulations, if you've got a full house, up to 1,000 years is our plastics drinks bottle. So again, brilliant that we've got that policy success story with a deposit return system coming soon. But again, we need to be thinking about all these items and thinking about, do we need them? Do we need them to be made of plastic? Because they can enter the environment and last a long time, impacting some of our amazing sea creatures. So congratulations if you got them all right, but if you didn't, don't worry, because you might have beaten the game. So congratulations if you got some of those right, but don't worry if you didn't, because it's all just about starting to raise awareness about these items. Because when we think about it, do you think plastic items ever truly disappear in the marine environment? Definitely not. So what happens with plastic is it keeps breaking down into smaller and smaller pieces until it becomes what's known as microplastics. So scientists around the world are now studying these microplastics with microscopes in labs, and they're actually seeing that the animals at the bottom of the food chain, plankton, these tiny little microscopic sea creatures, are now eating these microplastics, and it's working its way up to the food chain, so it's even impacting our sharks. So poor Sheila. So this is why we need to ensure that we turn off the tap. We don't want any plastics or any type of litter entering the marine environment, and we need to keep pushing government, keep pushing business, and keep pushing ourselves to be finding the policies that are going to work to stop all of this litter entering our ocean. So hopefully you've enjoyed the video, and what would be amazing to do is maybe now have a chat either online with friends, on social media, with me, or with people in your household about what policies can you change in your house, what rules could you maybe change to reduce the amount of single-use plastic you maybe use, so these items that you only use once, like bags and bottles and then get thrown away. Is there a local business that you can support that's maybe a zero waste shop, or is there a business that you could speak to about changing some of the packaging that they're using? Or do you want to arrange a meeting with a councillor, an MSP or an MP to talk about what you think governments should be doing to change the laws, change the policy right up at the top? Let us know, and let's see if we can create a manifesto for the ocean so we can be coming out of 2020 with a list of things we all need to do to save our seas. So good luck everyone with the task, and enjoy the rest of the Unpacked Festival. Bye!
In a time of global instability, it's a matter of urgency for decision makers to listen and respond to the needs and concerns of Scotland's young people. For this to happen, we need as many young people as possible to continue to engage in politics despite the difficult circumstances. Between now and the 19th of September, we would like your views to inform our 2021-26 manifesto from Scotland's young people.
As the democratically elected voice of the Scotland's young people, the issues we focus and take action on come directly from concerns raised by 12 to 25-year-olds across the country. By sharing your views in this consultation, you will directly shape SYP's work over the next 5 years, as well as help us inform Scotland's political parties on what changes young people would like to see.
In our survey, you'll be asked your opinion on a range of statements about issues young people and organisations have helped us to identify. Completing the survey will also earn you 150 Young Scot reward points. If you don't have a Young Scot rewards account, it doesn't take long to set one up using your Young Scot National Entitlement Card. With your help, we hope to ensure that the youth voice is at the heart of the political decision making in Scotland.
My name's Jack Bell. I'm the MSYP for Perthshire South and Kinrossshire. I have brown hair and I'm wearing a burgundy shirt.
Hello everybody, my name is Harrison Wavell from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, And I have brown hair, I'm wearing a blue shirt, and I'm wearing glasses.
Thank you. So, Harry, would you be able to give us a brief rundown of what the EMF does?
Yes, Jack. So the Ellen MacArthur Foundation was set up in 2010 by Ellen MacArthur, or Dame Ellen MacArthur, who was a professional sailor. And we were set up in 2010 with the mission to accelerate the transition to a circular economy. And that is an economy which, instead of taking our resources out of the ground, making products, and then throwing away those products in a very wasteful process, it aims to keep all of those products and materials in use, in cycles, in our economy. And we have been trying to accelerate the transition to a circular economy by working with businesses, by working with governments and cities and educational institutions, so that we can change the way that we design, make, and use all of the things that exist in our economy.
Fantastic. So I myself have been involved with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation before. I attended their series of circular economy webinars for teens that brought together young people from all over the world to learn about the circular economy and to take on some challenges that would inspire us to make some meaningful change. I thought that these webinars were absolutely incredible, and so I was very keen to ask the EMF to be involved in our Unpacked festival today. And so what we'd like to show you is a clip from a show that has been produced by the EMF. Harry, could you please give us a quick rundown of that?
Yes, certainly. So we have recently been hosting what we call the Circular Economy Weekly Show, where we aim to bring circular economy topics to life, where we invite experts and guest speakers to come and talk to us about the things that really matter. So we've covered design, we've covered food systems, we've covered cities, circular economy in cities, and this particular clip introduces how the circular economy can help to tackle climate change.
Brilliant. So I suppose all that's left to say is we hope you enjoy the clip.
Thank you, Jack. I hope you enjoy it.
Welcome to the Explore the Circular Economy show by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, where we talk about the transition away from a linear take, make, waste economy to one where we design out waste and pollution, keep products and materials in use, and regenerate natural systems. We're streaming out on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on Facebook and Twitter every single Tuesday from 12 p.m. BST. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Seb. I'm from the learning team here at the Foundation. And I'm once again rejoined by my co-host Laura today. Welcome, Laura.
Hi, thank you, Seb. I'm also part of the Learning and Comms team here at the Foundation, and I'm very excited to be co-hosting today's show, where we're going to be exploring the crucial role that the circular economy can play in tackling climate change. Who has joined us today, Seb?
Our guest today is from the Foundation's Insight Analysis team, Suki. She's worked on a number of projects in her time here at the Foundation, but perhaps most notably, at least for this conversation, she was the lead researcher and author on the Completing the Picture paper we published on the role that circular economy can play in tackling climate change. We published it last September. So great to have Suki on the show today.
Welcome, Suki. We are really excited to have you here. So let's dive in, and most people probably watching this show can probably agree that climate change is such a big issue nowadays. I mean, we've seen it on the news. A lot of people are suffering it within their communities, and there are signs that it's becoming increasingly important at the moment with at the highest levels with the 2015 Paris Agreement, the European Union Green New Deal, just to name a couple of them. But maybe to start with, you could remind us, why is there such an urgency attached to this issue?
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here. And yes, of course. So we are all acutely aware of being in the middle of a coronavirus pandemic, but what we also find ourselves in the middle of is a climate emergency. And the question here is, how can we avoid the next global crisis, right? So if we look at climate change, science shows that we must keep temperatures below 1.5 degrees. And to do that, we must aim for net zero emissions by 2050 if we are to avoid irreversible climate effects and avoid devastating impacts on our society, economy, and environment. And the problem we find ourselves in today is that we're nowhere near to meeting our climate goals. And if we fail to significantly reduce our emissions, then the carbon budget we have to limit the temperature to 1.5 degrees will be used up within less than 8 years. And so this is quite problematic, and it leaves us with very little time. And in order to be able to tackle this, we really need ambitions to be much more ambitious, and we need transformative actions.
And I mean, that story, as Lara kind of fronted up with, is probably quite familiar to many people watching this episode. Don't worry, guys, it's going to get even more positive as the show progresses, but that's the context. What our viewership will also possibly be kind of thinking, or maybe assuming, is, well, this is really about transitioning to renewable energy. It's about transitioning away from fossil fuel-based energy sources of energy to renewable energy. Is that true?
It is very important. So when we talk about tackling climate change, renewable energy and energy efficiency are absolutely critical in our fight against climate change. And we can already see tremendous progress taking place that's already achieving already. A great example is how renewable energy and energy efficiency has been estimated to be able to provide 90% of the energy-related emissions reduction by 2050. So that's very exciting. And it really helps show how much progress we're already making. However, I think the issue we wanted to highlight in the paper is that although renewable energy and energy efficiency are really critical, it just won't be enough if we are to reach these net zero emissions by 2050. And this is what we wanted to highlight.
And just a very quick clarifying question. Energy efficiency. What do we mean when we talk about energy efficiency?
We're talking about being able to do the same amount of performance, but then with less energy, which is critical. I mean, these are things that we look at, for example, within the built environment or in the way we produce our goods. But yeah, so these are, and especially renewable energy, there's a lot of attention on that, and it's absolutely important. But if we are to limit the temperature rise to 1.5 degrees, we will need more solutions to help us basically close that emissions gap.
And Suki, could you elaborate a little bit on this? Why is it not enough, as you say, to shift to renewable energies and invest in energy efficiency?
Yeah, and this is a good question. I think we get that question quite a lot. And I have a slide 1, if you could share that with the audience. But this basically is an image that shows the 55 versus 45. So if we look at the global emissions today, all of the CO2 emitted around the world, of that, around 55% of those emissions come from the energy sector. So these are emissions that come from the burning of fossil fuels for the production of energy and for heat generation, but it's also the burning of fossil fuels for within your building, so for heating, cooking, lighting, but also for transportation. And these emissions, that 55%, can more easily be tackled through renewable energy and energy efficiency. But the question here is, what about the overlooked emissions? What about the remaining 45%? And here, the remaining 45% comes from the way we produce our goods and manage our land. So these are emissions, for example, that come from the way we produce our goods, but also from the way we produce materials like steel, cement, aluminium, and plastic. And these emissions cannot easily be tackled through renewable energy and energy efficiency. It's a lot trickier. So to give you a simple and an illustrative example, if I were to say to you car emissions, what do you think of?
I think of the exhaust pipe.
Right. So if you think of car emissions, Exactly. So you think of exhaust fumes. So when we talk about how can we tackle these greenhouse gas emissions, you think of electrification. How can we electrify our cars? And this is definitely an important step towards tackling these emissions. But what about the car itself? And what about all the energy that went into making that car? How do we tackle those emissions? And so this is the untold story. Those are the overlooked emissions that we try to address in the paper.
And so we're talking about here, like actually making plastics or steel involves quite a bit of energy going into the production processes, and there's energy inputs and emissions that come from those energy inputs across the value chain, not just in these specific big industries that are powered directly by industry, like a building, for example. What, Suki, my question to you is, what makes these emissions so hard to tackle? I'm talking about the 45% that now.
Yeah. So let's take a look at these 4 materials, right? So steel, cement, aluminum, and plastic. There are 3 key factors that make it quite difficult for renewable energy and energy efficiency to solve. And these come down to process emissions, high melting temperatures, and end-of-life treatment. So if we look at process emissions, here we're talking about the chemical processes in the making of materials like iron, cement, and plastic. So turning iron to iron oxide, the calcination of limestone to make cement. Plastic in itself is made of carbon. These chemical processes emit CO2 or require carbon. These are things that happen when you're making materials. You cannot really solve this through renewable energy. When we talk about high melting temperatures, steel is a great example. You need temperatures that go all the way up to 2000 degrees Celsius. There's a lot of innovation happening in terms of electrification, and that is very exciting. However, currently it is not put up at scale, and it's not yet very cost effective. So the reality of the situation is that we are still very much dependent on the burning of fossil fuels to generate these very high temperatures. And then the end-of-life treatment, plastic is a great example here. A lot of the plastic today is still being incinerated. When you incinerate plastic, you emit CO2. Again, all these examples cannot be tackled through renewable energy and energy efficiency. We need different system-level solutions that address the way we produce and use our materials.
And I think what I like about what you're saying, sorry to jump in again, but is that we could make the transition to renewables, 100% renewable powered buildings, transportation systems, and our like energy system, energy sector, and we still would only be, and it's a significant percentage, 55%, but we'd still be only be tackling 55% of the emissions, which isn't enough to achieve the targets and goals and ambitions that you set out in the introduction.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly.
And this episode is called Tackling Climate Change, the Case for a Circular Economy, for a reason. And Seb has mentioned in the beginning of the show the 3 principles of the circular economy: designing out waste and pollution, keeping products and materials in use for as long as possible, and regenerating natural systems. So Suki, my question is, how can the circular economy help us tackle the remaining 45%? And it would be great if you could illustrate this with some examples.
So I'll just use the 3 principles, and this is a simplification, but it just helps illustrate. But I'll go, for example, if we're talking about designing out waste, what you're inherently doing is you're avoiding virgin materials that are being produced, then wasted, and landfilled. So you're avoiding the greenhouse gas emissions that are associated with virgin materials, the production of those. You're avoiding also the emissions that are associated with the incineration of it. So by designing out waste, you're tackling these emissions. And then you've got keeping materials in use. In this principle, when you do that, when you keep materials being recirculated within the economy, what you're doing is you're preserving all of the energy that went into making that product. You're preserving it for longer within the economy. And then we've got regenerating natural systems. And with that specifically, we're talking about bringing nutrients back into the soil, creating healthier soils. And by doing that, you're preserving and maintaining the carbon sequestration potential of soils, so they can act as carbon sinks. So again, it's a simplification, but it shows how each of these principles contribute to reducing greenhouse gas. And I guess I could offer a few examples to illustrate this. I have two examples, the car and the food system. But I'll start with the car because I had used this earlier on today as an example. But I'll start with designing out waste. When we talk about car production, there's a lot of scrap material that's generated during the production. So how can we eliminate waste across the supply chain? And here you've got, new industrial processes, or you could think of substituting with different materials that are more efficient, material efficiency, and these kind of things. What you're doing, again, you're avoiding virgin material production that ends up being wasted in landfills. So in that sense, you're avoiding those associated emissions. When designing out waste, it's also about, let's say, thinking about how do you design cars with less material. If you have less material, your need for raw materials is lower and therefore lower emissions. But also, if you have less material, your car is lighter. If your car is lighter, your fuel consumption is less, and therefore also your emissions are lower. So that's example from designing out waste. And for keeping materials in use, here we are thinking about how can we design cars to be more durable, modular. How can you design the car in such a way that the components can be reused, remanufactured, recycled. What you're effectively doing is you're prolonging the lifetime of the car. And in doing that, you're preserving the energy for longer. But at the same time, by reusing these materials, you are avoiding new production, you're avoiding landfill, therefore avoiding emissions. And then I think a great example was recycling. Recycling is a lot less carbon intensive than the production of primary materials. So as an example, if we look at those four materials, steel, cement, and aluminium, as I mentioned earlier, these recycled materials can generate the processing generates 40 to 70% fewer CO2 compared to virgin material production. So that's a really interesting example where you can also save emissions. So that's the example for the car.
So the point being, extracting raw materials to then produce for the first time produces more emissions than when they cycle through the kind of loops of a circular economy, whether that's reuse or remanufacture or recycling.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's about making sure that you optimize the use of your materials, keep them in use for as long as possible, so you avoid them to be incinerated, where emissions are associated with that, but also avoiding new production if it's not necessary. Yeah.
And this really echoes kind of the Foundation's butterfly diagram. For anyone who's not familiar with that, I'm sure many people are, where we talk about the fact that those loops in the technical cycle, they all have some reflection in terms of the embedded energy that's held within the product. And we don't have a loop for, there is no loop for if you have to make it all from new again. But the point is that all of the loops keep more embedded energy and value than making it fresh. And then as you go in, the different processes use less and less energy or new inputs.
Yes, absolutely. Would it be useful to give food? So if we look at the food system, it's slightly different because we're looking at the biological cycle. But if I start with designing out waste, it is quite similar, right? A lot of waste, if we look at food supply chains, around 25% of food is being wasted. And so how can you avoid unnecessary waste across the supply chain? So one of the things you could do is try to better match supply and demand. There's also an opportunity to redistribute surplus edible food for human consumption. By doing that, you're avoiding the production of food that you end up wasting, that people don't consume, and then get incinerated. So similarly there, you're then avoiding these emissions that are associated with new production and then incineration. Another element, keeping materials in use. Well, from a food system, we're talking about closing nutrient loops. So how can we, if we look at unavoidable food waste, things like food leftovers, agricultural byproducts, can we find a way to compost those? Can we find a way to bring those nutrients back into the soil? And by doing that, it can act as an organic fertilizer. So you're then replacing chemical fertilizers that are much more energy intensive for their production, but also you're creating healthier soils and preserving their carbon sequestration potential.
Can you answer this question in 30 seconds? There are 7 species of marine turtle. How many of these are threatened with extinction? A1, B3, C4, or D6? Okay, so there are 7 species of marine turtle. How many of these are threatened with extinction? The answer is D6. Did you get this one right? Well done. Now on to our next activity.
My name is Naira Gustasim, and I live in Vancouver, BC, on the unceded territory of the Coast Salish tribes, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. I am a member of the Vote 16 campaign, a youth-led movement to lower the voting age to 16 in British Columbia. Climate change affects young people in my country because we are painfully aware of the consequences it will have on our adult lives and the future generations to come. We are burdened with our government's inability to serve and protect, as demonstrated with his support of the Trans Mountain Pipeline, and unfortunately, we cannot vote for better climate action policy. Instead, young people are taking to the streets, protesting and educating one another, hoping to make a difference within ourselves. As seen with our Friday for the Future strikes, we are both demanding our rights as citizens to a safe country, as well as empowering our future lawmakers and leaders in hopes to create a better, more environmentally friendly world.
My name is Katri Bannister. I'm a 16-year-old youth climate activist and community organizer from Thetis Island, which is off the coast of Vancouver Island in British Columbia, Canada. And I'm here to talk a little bit about how climate change is impacting youth in Canada. And it's not an easy thing to sum up because there is a plethora of ways that climate change is impacting youth in Canada. Some of these ways include exposure to rapidly degrading ecosystems and loss of ecologically significant spaces, something that is also being accelerated by urban development and globalization, and those things too are contributing to climate change. Another impact is the effects that climate change is having on the mental health of youth. Terms like climate grief or eco-anxiety are becoming more and more common as the climate crisis progresses and as our situation becomes more and more dire. And as climate change worsens, we will also see the political relationships between countries become more and more strained and social issues becoming less and less manageable as the result of the interconnectedness between climate, environmental, and social issues. In my larger community on Vancouver Island, I lead the Cowichan Valley Earth Guardians crew. We host educational events, teach workshops, design social media content, hold climate strikes, and create art as ways to stimulate action, both from our communities and from our politicians. The time for climate action, as it has been for decades, is now. And with only about a decade now to ensure that we do not experience catastrophic changes in Earth's ecology and climate, we must take substantial action.
Something I think about when thinking about what the effects of climate change will have on young people in Canada is our future and what it looks like in 50 years, and also the future of my children and my grandchildren. And then even the simple things, like being able to walk outside into an ocean of green and blue and beautiful colors that we have here in BC. And then the actions, specifically the actions that I'm partaking in at the BC Youth Council is with the environmental campaign that we're running, implementing the single-use plastic ban across BC. To eliminate that source of emissions and help combat the climate crisis that way.
Can you answer this question in 30 seconds? How many young people in Scotland told SYP they would use an alternative to single-use packaging if it was cheaper? A, 20%, B, 25%, C, 30%, or D, 35%? How many young people in Scotland told SYP they would use an alternative to single-use packaging if it was cheaper? The answer is B, 25%. Did you get it right? We hope you're enjoying the day so far. There's another activity just coming up.
Hey everyone, I'm Kirstie and I work for the Scottish Youth Parliament. We are the democratically elected voice of Scotland's young people. At SYP, we're in the process of developing our next youth manifesto, and we want to hear the views of young people across Scotland. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about who we are and how you can help us to inform Scotland's political parties on what changes young people would like to see in the next parliamentary term. So in today's session, we'll cover a brief introduction to the Scottish Youth Parliament, who we are and why we exist. We'll be asking you to complete our manifesto survey, which will inform our work over the next 5 years. And we'll go through a few of the questions that our survey will ask you about so that you know what to expect. So first of all, what is the Scottish Youth Parliament? So elected members of Scottish Youth Parliament, or MSYPs, represent young people all over Scotland. Elections are held every 2 years, and anyone aged 14 to 25 can stand as candidates to become MSYPs. So MSYPs are elected to represent young people in every constituency in all 32 local authorities across Scotland. And we also have 11 MSYPs who represent national voluntary organisations. So the role of an MSYP is to ensure that the voices of young people are heard in the development of policies that affect them. MSYPs build strong positive relationships with local and national decision makers. So we have a strong collective voice through which we can influence real change. Our recent national campaigns, which were designed and delivered by young people, have really driven historic changes in society, such as the lowering of the voting age to 16 in Scotland, marriage equality, and increasing financial support for young carers. So today we are going to be asking for your help. So between now and the 19th of September, we would like your views to inform our 2021 to 26 manifesto, which will be called From Scotland's Young People. So as the democratically elected voice of Scotland's young people, the issues we focus and take action on come directly from the concerns raised by 12 to 25-year-olds across the country. So by sharing your views in this consultation, you will directly shape our work over the next 5 years, as well as help us inform Scotland's political parties on what changes young people would like to see. So in our survey, you will be asked for your opinion on a range of statements, and these have been selected by MSYPs after consultation with a wide range of young people and youth organisations. So all of the statements which receive over 50% agreement will become official SYP policy and will enable us to take action on them. For statements where there is more than one option, every option which receives more than 50% agreement will be included in our resulting calls. So all you have to do is answer each question with agree, disagree, or don't know. So we need as many of you as possible to complete the survey in order to give our manifesto a strong mandate to represent the views of Scotland's young people. So I'm going to take you through a few of the important subjects that we'll ask you about in the survey, just so that you know what to expect. So one important topic that you'll be asked about in the survey is education and lifelong learning, which will cover issues like funding for the education system, addressing LGBT bullying in schools, and investment in college and university welfare services. So for example, a question you might be asked here is, to increase productivity, well-being and attendance, the school day should start no earlier than 10 a.m. for all secondary school pupils in Scotland. So have a think about whether you agree, disagree, or don't know. So just to give you a bit of context on this argument, some people might say that if the school day was built more realistically around the sleep schedule of young people, students would be more likely to show up to school, they'd be more productive as a result of getting longer sleep, and they would generally be healthier as a lack of sleep wouldn't have a chance to build up and affect their health. But those who argue against that might say that a 10 a.m. start wouldn't properly prepare young people for life after school. And it also might cause problems for working parents and carers who can't provide transport to school at 10 a.m. It could also be argued that the solution to tiredness at school is actually to get to bed earlier rather than to make the school day start later. So another topic on our consultation is justice. So this covers issues like the age of criminal responsibility, the rights of young people in the criminal justice system. So for example, young offenders up to the age of 18 years old should not be imprisoned, and rehabilitative alternatives to detention should be put into practice. So have a think. Do you agree, disagree, or maybe you're not quite sure? So rehabilitative alternatives to prison focus on restoring a person back to health and everyday life. So those alternatives might include things like educational programs, community work, treatment, or therapeutic programs. So arguments for those alternatives might include the safety of young people, as about half of children say they don't feel safe in detention. It may also be argued that it's more beneficial, both for young people and for society, for young offenders to receive education rather than punishment. Additionally, it's said that prison doesn't work as a deterrent to crime, and young people in prison are likely to reoffend. But on the other hand, a lot of people believe that the most serious cases, such as murder, can only be punished with a prison sentence. It may also be argued that only a prison sentence will be adequate justice for the victim of a crime, and also it could be argued that although it might not always be the case, prison does deter some people from reoffending in the future. These are really, really tricky and complicated issues, so don't rush through the survey. Make sure you take your time and have a good think about each question before you answer. There's no rush at all. So another topic you'll be asked about is transport, environment, and rural affairs. This topic covers issues like the global climate emergency, the responsibilities of the food and retail industry in reducing single-use packaging, and discounts for particular groups of people using public transport in Scotland. So this is a particularly prominent conversation as the climate emergency is one of the defining issues of our generation. So for example, we want to know what you think about this statement. The global climate emergency is an issue of climate justice, where those who contribute least to greenhouse gas emissions are the most impacted. So before we finish this, let's just pause there to explain what we mean by climate justice. Climate justice is a term used to frame global warming as an ethical and political issue rather than one that's purely environmental or physical. Advocates of climate justice argue that the climate crisis has been overwhelmingly caused by rich countries, but has had a much greater impact on developing countries. So with that in mind, think about the following propositions. The countries most responsible for greenhouse gas emissions must be the first to reduce their emissions. They must share the benefits of their increased wealth and development with those countries impacted the most by climate change. And they must compensate loss and damage incurred in less developed countries as a result of climate change by contributing finances to a global fund, supporting research, and working on international cooperation. So those are quite wordy. Take a few minutes to go over all of those. You might want to pause the webinar here to give them a good read. And you can agree with none, some, or all three of those statements. So what do you think? Do you think it would balance things out if the responsible countries took these actions? You'll also be asked about jobs, economy, and fair work. So this topic covers issues such as the gender pay gap, zero-hour contracts, and adequate financial support for all citizens. So for example, employers should increase efforts to close the gender pay gap by improving equal opportunity policies, carrying out investigations into equal pay, having flexible working policies, and ensuring equal pay for equal work. So let's have a wee think about this. The gender pay gap is the average difference between hourly wages for men and women. The gender pay gap exists because there are more men than women in senior or higher paid roles. So you have to be careful with this one because people do often get a wee bit mixed up. The gender pay gap isn't the same as equal pay. So unequal pay is when women are paid less than men for doing the exact same work, whereas the gender pay gap refers to the wider structural reasons why more men than women are in higher paid roles. So there are many possible reasons for this, including caring responsibilities are shared unequally, part-time work is generally less senior. So if employers see part-time work as a woman's choice and a woman is therefore responsibility for her lower earnings, the pressure is off the employer to do anything about that. And women are likely to take on roles in caring sectors, which are generally still less valued and lower paid than a lot of other sectors. So how do we think about this? Go back to the questions and the provisions that we've suggested that employers could take to address the gender pay gap. You might agree with none, some, or all of those suggestions. Another important topic is health and well-being, which covers mental and physical health. So this topic will ask questions on protecting the NHS, responding to drug misuse and mental health training for all healthcare professionals. So for example, should the NHS be protected from privatisation, remaining free at the point of use? So this is a really relevant debate at the moment with the NHS at the forefront of conversations around the coronavirus outbreak. But the most commonly held view of those who hope to protect the NHS from privatisation is the moral argument that everyone deserves access to free healthcare, regardless of wealth or status. It's also argued that the most efficient way to provide good healthcare is for services to be publicly funded and publicly run. However, on the other hand, some people argue that the NHS doesn't allow them to have enough patient choice about what treatment they wish to have. It's also argued that those who founded the NHS didn't anticipate the ageing population that we're seeing now, which does have an effect of stretching NHS resources more than ever before. So I won't go into the rest of the topics in detail, but we will also want to hear your views on sport and leisure, external affairs, UK and international relations, equality and human rights, social security, and culture and media. And all of those will be asked about in the Manifesto survey. The final section of our consultation will ask questions relating to the impact of the COVID-19 outbreak on the lives of young people in Scotland. So these will be 6 questions that will ask about the provisions you would like the government to make to ensure that the rights, opportunities, and concerns of young people are at the heart of political decision-making moving forward. Have we think about whether you agree or disagree with the following statements relating to the recovery from COVID-19. So, children and young people's rights should be at the forefront of decisions made during the COVID-19 crisis and the recovery process. Every young person in Scotland should have access to fast, reliable internet and devices to access the digital world regardless of their geographical location or financial standing. Information must be made available in a youth-friendly and accessible manner, and the Scottish Government should ensure that young people's academic achievements aren't negatively impacted. So in a time of global instability, it's a matter of urgency for decision makers to listen and respond to the needs and concerns of Scotland's young people. For this to happen, we need as many of you as possible to continue to engage in politics despite the difficult circumstances. With your help, we hope to ensure that the youth voice is at the heart of political decision making in Scotland. Make sure you complete our Manifesto survey before the 19th of September 2020, and please share the link with your pals as well. Completing the survey will also earn you 150 Young Scot reward points. If you don't have a Young Scot rewards account, it doesn't take long to set one up. You can just use your Young Scot National Entitlement card, and your points code will be shared with you at the end of the survey. If you have any questions on the Manifesto, you can contact us at manifesto@syp.org.uk. You can also find us on Twitter as @officialsyp for updates and information on all things Scottish Youth Parliament. Thanks so much for listening, and thank you so much for helping us to amplify the voices of young people across Scotland.
Can you answer this question in 30 seconds? How many young people told SYP that recycling is important to them? A, 65%, B, 75%, C, 85%, or D, 95%? How many young people told SYP that recycling is important to them? And the answer is C, 85%. Did you manage to get that one right? Well done. Now on to our next activity.
My name is Martin Carl, MSYP, and I'm the MSYP for Aberdeen Donside. I have blonde hair, I'm wearing glasses, and I'm also wearing a blue hooded sweatshirt. On the 25th of January 2020, our Campaign Action Day celebrated the anniversary of Robert Burns' birthday. Robert Burns was Scotland's national poet, born in Ayrshire in 1759. Much of his poetry was inspired by nature and the environment, so on this day, we encourage everyone to get creative and to use poetry to campaign. MSYPs across Scotland wrote their own environment-themed poems, and here are some of those poems. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this wee poetry reading to close the first session of today's Unpacked Festival.
Hi, my name is Victoria and I'm the MSYP for Motherwell and Wishaw. I have short, red, orangey, fiery hair and a white shirt. Today I'll be reading a poem that myself, Josh Kennedy and Emily Nix have created during our Conveners meeting in January, and it reads, "Sustainability is key, and by loving our rivers and trees, we can keep our planet free here at SYP. And packing it up and packing it in, we can see our planet will be amazeballs, and that's the tea." Thank you for listening.
Hi everyone, my name's Jack Bell and I'm the MSYP for Perthshire South in Kinrossshire. I'm also a member of SYP's Campaign Delivery Group. I'm wearing a burgundy shirt and I have brown hair. Today I'd like to read out a poem that I wrote for January's Campaign Action Day called We Awaken, and it's inspired by Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven. Wandering the trails found near me, I see something very clearly. Piles on piles of rubbish cast upon the grassy floor. These blights on eyesight now are tainting landscapes once revered in paintings, causing countless youths campaigning on what they abhor, to start an eco-revolution like never seen before. Concern for all our futures lies at its most humble core. Dissenting children draw some ire, yet Australia drowns in fire, as to the coal and oil extracted from amidst the ore. Yet the culprits in their bubble, blind and deaf to all the trouble, pollute more, on the double, of nature they are bored. Condemning earth to witness pain, continually ignored. Treating scientific studies as old wives' tales and lore. We race towards this bleakest fate, engaging all in fierce debate, generations warring on their errors and their chores. At this point in evolution, prior to our execution, the youth worldwide know the solution, how best to fix what's torn. They seek to prolong all our lives, not to settle a score. And to this death, strife, hate and grief, the youth say nevermore. Thank you.
Hiya, I'm Rosie Sumption, MSYP. I have brown curly hair, which is up in a ponytail. I have blue eyes and I'm wearing a burgundy chunky jumper. For my SYP Reduce Pollution poem, I wanted to choose something quintessentially Scottish. So this is an environmental take on Billy Connolly's If It Wasn't For Your Wellies. And when I chose to do this, I had no idea I was going to need to sing it. And if I did, I probably would have chosen something else. But I still feel it captures why we should be looking after our planet. So this is If It Wasn't For Your Planet. It's very short, it's very matter-of-fact, and it's very badly sung. If it wasn't for your planet, where would you be? You'd be dead. That's it. Because that's sort of what it comes down to. But my mum and dad both told me that that wasn't enough. So if you think you can come up with the next verse or the next line, then be sure to share it on Twitter and hopefully we can come up with the full song. If you use the hashtag SYP Reduce Pollution, then I will see it, and if we come up with the whole song, then I am willing to sing the whole thing in the name of environmental protection. So that's your challenge for today.
Hi everyone, I'm Hannah. I'm the MSYP representing Galloway and West Dumfries. I've got brown hair, I'm wearing glasses and I'm wearing a green hoodie. Thank you for taking part in this morning's session. We really hope you enjoyed it. I'd like to say a huge thank you to everyone who led our activities this morning's session. I'm really excited to see how you go about becoming an ocean optimist and continue to share your love of the environment. Before we break for lunch, we'd love to hear what you think about the festival and see how you're celebrating today. Please do keep in touch with us on social media at officialSYP on Twitter and Instagram using the hashtag #SYPReducePollution. And if you had a go at any of the activities we saw in this session, please do share a picture of your creations with us as well. During the lunch break, we've got a challenge for you. We'd like everyone who takes part in Unpacked today to make a pledge, to do something, to take action to protect the environment. Here at SYP, we're big fans of the butterfly effect. We believe that everyone has the power to make a difference and that lots of small changes can have a big impact. For my pledge, I'm going to take time out of my day as often as possible to explore the natural world, to take care of it by reducing my use of single-use packaging. So, over the lunch break, let us know what your pledge is and how you're going to speak out against pollution in Scotland. Have a great break and we'll see you back at 1 o'clock.